Well, Section 83, in my mind, is an archaic law. I understand when it was written, but times change, and I think the government really needs to look at some of the laws and say, okay, you know what? It's a different era now. It's a different generation. It was that thing was written about 3 to 4 generations ago. But there's also a clause there that says it can be either amended or changed pending a provincial, athletic commission or supervising body, which we have here in the province of Ontario. That to me says, hey, you know what? The Ontario Athletic Commissioner can either default it down to a municipal level or do it on a provincial level and say, you know what? Let's sanction and regulate the sport, just like they did in Quebec, just like they do municipally in British Columbia with Vancouver and Vernon and Prince George, just like they do in Alberta, whether it's Edmonton or Calgary. We can do the same thing here in Ontario.
To be a member of the MMA media in such a big way here in Toronto, Ontario, and across Canada, and not be able to cover mixed martial arts in my own backyard here in Ontario is absolutely ridiculous and ludicrous, and it boils down to plain ignorance. And the person in charge in Ontario, Ken Hayashi, I've made myriad call-outs. I've actually publicly called him out at events even and tried to reach him both diplomatically and otherwise, and he refuses to talk to us about the MMA. He is one of these, dinosaurs, unfortunately, that believes that Section 83 of the Canadian Criminal Code states that prize fight involves boxing, and that's all.
So, the government's not sending a consistent message. Is it illegal? It's legal everywhere else. If you read Section 83, I don't know, is it or isn't it? Ken Hayashi will tell you it's illegal, but he won't really give you a good reason, nor will he debate with anybody that's educated about the process. So we just have to hope that the message gets sent higher up that, not only on an athletic standpoint, but on an economic standpoint. We're in a recession. The stats are there. How much money does the UFC event bring in? And how much will it bring into Toronto or Hamilton or anywhere around? It's the money's staggering.
Mixed martial arts isn't going anywhere. I mean, it is absolutely ridiculous. I feel like pounding my, head against the brick wall. I just don't understand it. Even if I were not a fan of MMA, the simple fact the economy would, benefit it's beyond me. I think it's a simple case of where they want the attention and want to know, hey, look at all these people want this to happen, but I hold the power in my hands. Ignorance.
Ken Hayashi, who's the athletic director, he really doesn't want to have any communication whatsoever when it comes to mixed martial arts. I think Ken Hayashi has to open his eyes and realize that it's a sport like every other. A number of different Olympic sports are involved in mixed martial arts. Judo, Taekwondo, boxing, and wrestling, 4 key elements of mixed martial arts. If the Olympics are accepted in Canada, mixed martial arts should be accepted in Ontario.
Head down, keep your head down. That's it.
Ken's pretty much untouchable down there. He is not, in my opinion, I've known the guy, and he's a good guy and all, but I don't think he's gonna do the extras to make this happen. I think he's gonna have to be educated on it, take some seminars and let him know that this sport is as safe as it gets, because you got people in there, referees and judges and stuff that knows what they're doing. And I think until he could get on that page, there's gonna be some problems in getting this sport over there.
One of the biggest travesties that's the end result of mixed martial arts not being legalized in the province of Ontario is you have fighters like Carlos Newton, you have fighters like, Sean Pearson, Mark Bocek, Mark Hominick, Sam Stout, guys of that nature that are unable to fight in their home province.
We're in London, England. We're on our way to the Royal Albert Hall to watch Matt Hughes and Carlos Newton fight for the belt.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, the official weigh-in for the Brawl at the Hall UFC 38 is about to begin. Let's start off with the championship bout. Carlos Newton to the scale. Carlos Newton is going to bring the Dragon Ball Power of the Sun to the octagon. The Ronin has weighed in at 76.6.
When I was UFC champion, the amount of recognition I got here in Toronto was pretty mild compared to other places. In the U.S., you go to Vegas, yeah, people know you. You go to Japan, you're really well appreciated. It would have been great to be able to say, I'm Canadian, and I'm the first UFC world champion from Canada.
The Premier of Ontario recently announced that he's open to mixed martial arts. He's open to listen, to hear what everyone has to say, and I'm very excited about that because it's the first time someone in that stature, in that position, has publicly come out and said, you know what? Yeah, let's listen. If the people want this and the athletes want to compete in this, then I want to hear why, and I want to hear why the detractors don't want to have it. The detractors have nothing to stand on. The Premier, if he's smart and he's, does it properly, will know and understand if he's educated correctly, which he will be because there's a lobbyist firm here that has been hired by the UFC that has their ducks in a row. They will educate him and make his whole caucus and everyone in Parliament understand that this sport is not a brutal sport. It's not a cockfighting sport that they think it is. It's not human cockfighting. It's not barbaric. It's trained athletes under unified rules. They have to go through tests, and it's an amazing sport.
I act for the Ultimate Fighting Championship. It's a company called Zuffa, and they've retained me to help them get MMA regulated in Ontario. I think that one of the things that is most important is to realize that not regulating the sport is more dangerous than regulating the sport. There have not been as many perceived injuries in the sport in a regulated environment. The fact of the matter is that mixed martial arts occurs all over Ontario illegally. By regulating the sport, we ensure that fighters are matched properly. We ensure that requisite physicals are conducted by physicians, and that the government actually takes part in the fight process. Without regulation, that does not happen. UFC is the gold standard. UFC is lobbying to regulate mixed martial arts, not to introduce UFC to Ontario, but to introduce mixed martial arts to Ontario. We believe that UFC is the gold standard because of its international, global standards of safety.
What defines Sam Stout? Right now, in this point in my life, fighting defines me, and my life really revolves around it, and everything else kind of takes a back seat to it right now. So it's a bit of a disappointment that my government in my home, doesn't support me.
Nice. Pick any sport, basketball, hockey, football. Can you just imagine if you were always the away team? You could play your sport, but you can't play it at home. You always have to be on the road. Okay? That's what it feels like for these fighters. They just want the chance for one time to fight in front of their family and friends and build a fan base here, especially in Ontario, specifically those guys in Toronto that want to fight in Toronto, that live in Toronto. It's the corporate capital of the country. Many of the head offices are based here in Toronto. They want to be able to make an income from mixed martial arts.
This is my passion. I went to university for 4 years and studied business. I got offered jobs once I got out of school, but I knew this is my passion. Passion breeds success. I've always thought that. And this is where I'm going to be in 10 years. I'm going to be doing this sport, whether it's competing or passing on the knowledge I've had, and not having the support of Ontario, having to be able to build your career and build your name and, have name recognition definitely hurts you in the long term because, we're fighting to have the right to, compete here, let alone building a brand within Ontario.
One of the hardest things I feel that is happening here in Ontario is the inability for sponsors such as myself, a business who is directly involved in mixed martial arts. Because of the repression here in Ontario, because there's no mixed martial arts here, it's getting harder and harder for us to sponsor athletes. There's no avenue for the fighters that are training every day, training 4 to 5 hours a day. There's no avenue for them to showcase their skills locally. They have to fight in the US, they have to fight overseas, they have to fight everywhere else. Their family can't see the fights, the sponsors can't see them, therefore it's getting harder and harder for the athletes, and that's what we want to do. We want to help these athletes, we want to sponsor the athletes. However, our hands are tied right now. They're not having events here in Ontario. So as Fight Planet, we're going to take the initiative and we're going to help with the awareness of legalization of mixed martial arts. What we plan to do is have the Legalize MMA shirts that Echo is producing. We'll have them available on our website as well as our retail stores. Another thing we're doing here at Fight Planet is we're going to have an online petition. If you go to our website, www.fightplanet.ca, we'll have a petition where you can be a part of this. You can be a part of the growth of Ontario's mixed martial arts scene. You can state your comments, you can state your complaints, what you like, what you don't like, and with this petition we're going to be taken to the legislative buildings in Queen's Park. Hopefully, if we have enough people, we can get this thing to where it needs to be, mainstream, legalized in Ontario, and having events every weekend.
The Hamilton Entertainment and Convention Facilities, we call it HECFI. It's an incorporated organization set up by the City of Hamilton to manage city-owned facilities, and those facilities include Hamilton Place, the Studio, the Hamilton Convention Center, and Copps Coliseum. And the kind of numbers you're talking about in those kinds of large events are, 20,000 people. Their average spend is about $100 when you factor it all. That's not the ticket. That's ancillary kinds of things. An average spend is about $100 in terms of, if they go out to restaurants, if they're staying in the hotel, taxis, shopping, bars, all those kinds of things. So you take 20,000 people, you multiply it by $100, that's the one-time injection of money into the Hamilton economy by having that kind of event here at Copps Coliseum.
The amount of money that comes in from mixed martial arts and boxing alone is incredible. But in Ontario, it's completely died off. And I believe that if he would simply empower himself to say, you know what, we can do this, we can bring in a lot of funds into the government here. We're not asking not to be taxed. Tax us. Tax our gate. Tax our revenue. Tax the merchandise. Tax the food and concessions. We're not saying don't tax us. Tax the fighters' purses. Tax the promoters. Doesn't matter. Tax it. Just make it legal. The people want to see this. The fighters want to fight. I mean, enough's enough. Let's be honest here.
Moment in history, the main event of the evening, 5-minute round for the strike.
MMA fans are such a diehard that if you were to hold an event close to a major city, people from that major city would attend. We hear that Montreal, which has held 2 very successful UFC competitions, 40% of those tickets, 4 out of 10, came from the Ontario region. So, I dare say to the politicians, and maybe I'll look into the camera and say this, wake up, it's the 21st century, you need help. We always talk about the fact that the economy is hitting us all. Bring one of the fastest growing sports in the world to Ontario and let the fans of this province enjoy, simply put.
To see Canada hosting the Olympic Games this year in Vancouver is, for me, a real sign of things to come, or a sign of things I hope to see happen. One day I want to see MMA in the Olympics again. I want to see that rejoining of Taekwondo, Judo, boxing, wrestling, all put back to its original form, which we call pancration in the old Olympics. And to see that happen would be, for me, it'll be the end of a great journey.
I mean, you take a look at the Summer Olympics and you take a look at boxing, judo, taekwondo, Olympic wrestling. Those are all Olympic sports. All of those sports are in mixed martial arts. The only thing that separates those sports when you amalgamate them all together and mixed martial arts is striking on the ground. So if you remove striking from the ground, why can't you have mixed martial arts in the Olympics?
If I were able to speak in front of someone with the power to help the sport get legalized in Ontario, I would simply say, sir or madam, we are here in the year 2010. There is a sport that is growing exponentially around the world that is called mixed martial arts. It is a hybrid of many different disciplines that are Olympic sports, that are considered, the forebears of sport, going back to the, wrestling and boxing and jiu-jitsu. And I would let them know that do the research. There are injuries in every sport. This is no more dangerous or less safe than any other sport that you already support, hockey, football, and otherwise. And then I would simply say, sir, the research indicates that there are more fans per capita of this sport in Ontario willing to spend their shrinking disposable income to support this sport, which in turn would support your city with its economic spin-off. And if politics is for the people, then like I've said, MMA better come to Ontario soon, or there will be a revolution.